Hello everyone, my name is Blackwatch. Welcome to another episode of How to Master, and in this week's episode we're looking at Gugi Muchoki Faraha, also known as Wamai. He was a member of the Kenyan Navy Special Boat Unit, and he's now a member of the Nighthaven CTU, which is a private military company that shouldn't exist in the Rainbow universe, but talk about that another day. He's a 2-armor, 2-speed operator on the defending side, and he has two primary weapons, the MP5K submachine gun, which I wouldn't recommend, or I don't know, it's kind of personal preference. With a 1.5 it's nice, so you can take that. And he also has the AUG 2. This one would be a 100% recommendation if it weren't for the fact that it is fat, and not in a good way. It just takes up a massive amount of screen space with the model on the right hand side. It's awkward to use because of how big it is, but it's still a very good gun. It's kind of like the 416. Secondary wise, he's got the Keratos 357, which is an easy first choice. Best revolver in the game, great damage, no recoil at all, really nice gun to use. And the P12, which is a reliable semi-auto pistol, high cap, low damage, basic stuff. It's the German pistol, but definitely go for the Keratos, it's just better in every way, pretty much. Secondaries, gadget wise, he's got proximity alarm, which are good, and he's got impact grenades, which are obviously good as well. This one, choice wise, just go for the one that makes the most sense in your composition. You know, someone might already have impact grenades as their best option, so then you go for proximity alarms. It's really up to you to decide that. His unique gadget is the magnet. I don't know what it stands for, but it's basically a small device that can be thrown from range, and it sticks to walls and surfaces and has a 6-meter radius in which it will grab projectiles out of the air and pull them towards it, at which point they'll detonate or just fall to the ground depending on what they are. So it can catch literally any projectile that the attacking team can throw at you. So I'm talking Capitows, flame bolts and smoke bolts, which normally wouldn't get caught by ADSs. The magnet snatches them. Same with gridlocks, tracks, they get snatched up. You know, frag grenades, flashbangs, candelas, smoke grenades, all that fun stuff gets taken by this gadget, and it'll pull it to its position, and then, as I say, it'll go off normally if it's the majority of things that have an explosion anyway. But if it's SAM cam, or an Argus cam, sorry, it will fall to the floor, and if it's tracks, it will also fall to the floor. So a couple of different effects, but it's essentially just an alternative for Jager that can be used in some more creative ways than Jager can, because Jager is very much a delete and it's done, whereas Wamai can be a bit more fun and creative. He starts off with one of them at the start of the round, and then he'll generate a new one every 40 seconds up to a maximum of 4. So he definitely suffers from the old can be pretty useless when he dies syndrome, but you know, we'll talk about that later. And yeah, I'd say he's a pretty competent alternative to Jager, but there are things that make him worse and there's things that will make him better as well, so we'll talk about that now. So his strengths: solid guns, good secondary. The primaries, the MP5K is not a bad gun at all. You know, it's got a wee bit too much vertical recoil, but it's far from bad. The 1.5 is nice on it. And then the AUG 2, really good gun apart from the fact that his model is just fat and stupid and oversized. He's strong because he counters Capito and Gridlock. These are two operators that basically don't have any counter in terms of their gadgets, and he presents one, so that's nice as well. You can really throw off some pushes that rely heavily on a Capito, so you can bring him if the enemy team are good with him. He has good secondary gadgets as well. You can never go wrong with proxies, usually can't go wrong with impacts either, so it's a solid set of secondary gadgets to back up a good primary gadget. And his stuff can be used more reactionary than, or reactionarily? That's not a word. You know what I mean. It can be used in a more reactionary way than Jager's ADSs can, because it's not like Jager can just discus them across the map, unlike Wamai, who can, and he can use it late in the round as a little, oh, I'm going to get pressure from this position, better give myself some extra cover. His weaknesses: he's a lot weaker than Jager is when he dies, because, as I said before, he has to generate his gadgets through the round. He doesn't just start with them as a pool, and it's a long generation period. 40 seconds is a long time to have to wait, and so if you're wanting to play him on site, a lot of the time the enemy team's going to be too fast for you to get any value out of them, because by the time you rock up with your gadget ready to go, they've already done the damage with their utility. So something to consider there. His weapon's also less friendly than the 416. I'm saying the AUG specifically is less friendly because whilst it does have the nice damage and all that kind of stuff, it's just, I'm maybe overstating how much the model size does actually affect the usability of the gun, but it does honestly feel like that right side of the screen is almost unusable when you run about in third person. I say in third person, I mean not ADS with the gun. And the way it aims, it comes down in a strange way because they have to pull the model heavy down below your eye line to actually bring the sight into the picture. And so that it just looks a bit strange when you compare it to other weapons, so it can take some getting used to, but it doesn't make it bad, it just makes it uncomfortable. He only gets 4 of his magnets in total, which could potentially be a strength compared to Jager, but ultimately in the grand scheme of things, even though Jager only gets those 3DSs that have 3 3DSs 3 ADSs that have 1 charge each, they can recharge their charges, and so you could end up getting God knows how many gadgets absorbed by his stuff, versus Wamai, who has the 4 and that's it. So something to keep in mind there as well. And the last thing is that he needs space for his gadget to be useful. This is something that not a lot of people really consider when they play Wamai. I've seen plenty of Wamais putting their magnets right next to each other, only for that magnet to then be detonated by a frag grenade, and it takes out its compatriot right next to it as well. These things aren't bulletproof, and they're not explosive proof either. And so if you want to use them properly, you basically got to steer clear of ADSs, and you got to steer clear of your own gadget. And sometimes, in some positions, that's easier said than done. So tips to make you better with them. Pretty simple ones actually. He doesn't have a huge amount of finesse to the way his gadget's used, beyond being creative with where you put them. So you want to think like an attacker. This comes up so often as a defender, is that you need to put yourself in the shoes of the attacker, specifically someone like Sledge, who's going to be using frag grenades, and think, where am I going to use this gadget? What doorways will I be standing in? What areas will I be approaching from? What sort of parts of the room that I'm in, or whatever room you want to defend, are going to be the ones that this operator is going to target specifically. And when you think like that, you can sometimes set it up so that the person who's throwing the frag grenade will end up chucking it, only for it to suddenly get caught in the air and detonate in their face. It doesn't happen very often, but when it does happen, it's very, very funny. Same thing with flashbangs, same thing with smoke grenades. You just want to do what you can to make sure that wherever you are repositioning the gadget, it's either going to take it out of place so it makes no effect to your team, or it's going to be an active negative for the enemy team beyond them losing the gadget's effectiveness. It could actually work against them by, putting smoke in a position they don't need it to be in, or by flashbanging them, blowing them up, that sort of stuff. If you catch tracks being Gridlock's stingers that she throws out, and you see that it's tracks that have been caught, then shoot the magnet with the tracks attached to it. Because unfortunately when it catches it, the tracks will still fall to the ground and deploy as normal after the magnet has finished catching it, which it still could benefit you because it's pulling it out of the position she wanted it to be in. But it's better just to get rid of it if you have the chance to. But don't, run out and put yourself in a dangerous position to do this, because a gadget's not worth your life. You want to think about how the magnet's going to affect your own team once the projectiles have been moved to that position. So I'm talking things like bandit batteries, mute jammers, even stuff like Maestro's Evil Eyes and Jager's ADSs, which is one of the big ones if you do end up doubling up the anti-grenade, anti-projectile play. You've got to think how a frag or a breaching round or one of Zophia's impacts being caught would actually affect the rest of the gadgets around the place, because the last thing you want to do is be putting a magnet down next to an Evil Eye just for you to essentially blow up your own team's gadget. So keep that in mind. Make sure that you're being intelligent and giving your other friends' gadgets the space that they deserve, so that you don't end up becoming the bad man on the team. Consider using them to cover your roam spots if you are roaming. A less common thing, but obviously if you're out roaming anyway and you've made that decision that you're not going to stay on site, there's no point in not using them to give yourself that little bit of extra help when you are out and about. Obviously if you place them down in a room thinking that you're going to get some action and then you don't, you may as well pick them up and move into the next place that you're going to go to. There's no point in leaving them behind in a place that's going to see little to no actual conflict, especially if it doesn't involve projectiles. So keep them mobile and just make the most of them when you are on the roam. But generally speaking, I would say Wamai is kind of better played as like a semi-roamer, so staying fairly close to the site, still helping the team, still providing that anti-grenade, anti-projectile play, whilst also leveraging the fact that he can handle himself so well with the guns that he has. So play that in-between role is my main recommendation, especially if you're newer to the game. He's very, very good against drone hole strats, so stuff like attacking the garage, snowmobile garage that is, on Chalet. A lot of the time the way to win that site is to chuck one of Capitau's flame bolts through the drone hole, so that the bandit on the other side then can't do anything about it. So the way you would then deal with that as the bandit is to have your Wamai place something right above the drone hole, maybe off to the side even, that you can put it sort of out the way but close enough that it's still going to be within line of sight, so that it snatches it and then the area of effect of the flame is too far away from the bandit to actually be a problem. But you've got to be smart about the way you place them. You don't want to just put it directly above the drone hole, because if you do that then you're essentially setting it off exactly where Capitau wanted it to go off. The only difference is that you've added a slight delay to it happening, so you know, maybe that delay will be enough to save you, but it's better to take the more assured route of actually getting it out of the way. Just want to reiterate again, you really want to keep your gadget away from ADSs. Just check if you've got a Jager on your team, if they're placing their gadgets late, make sure that your magnets aren't in a position where they're going to interfere with Jager's ADSs, because his stuff is very binary, it will get out of the way, and it will be there longer than yours will, so it's more important to keep his gadget alive. Recently I've noticed with Aruni, she is actually allowing Wamai to grab projectiles that have already been destroyed by her laser gates. So don't place them near laser gates, because you'll eat a gadget that no longer exists, and it's a bad feeling. I think it might be the same with Jager as well, where it's consuming one of his ADS charges on a gadget that's not actually in play anymore. I think it's to do with the fact that they do kind of pass through the doorway for a millisecond anyway before they fully disappear. Something that Ubisoft needs to take a look at though, because it's a very frustrating bug, if it is a bug. If it's a feature, then it's clueless. It really doesn't make any sense. And the last thing is, and it's a very short guide this one, the last thing is to use the range, honestly. 6 meters is the range of the gadget. It's 0.5 meters longer than Jager's ADS for some reason. You know, that 0.5 meters really goes a long way. But you want to use that range as much as you can. You can put it in places where it's going to be covering a massive area, and thanks to the fact that you can actually see the area that it's going to cover when you deploy the gadget, you want to make sure that it's affecting the spots that you need to affect. If you need to cover multiple places at once with the one gadget, it's the perfect thing to do it with, because that extra 0.5 meters is going to carry you all the way there. And you just want to make sure that it's being effective, that you're not missing any spots that you don't have to miss, and just not putting it so close to an area that it's going to get taken out for no reason. You know, you can put it out of sight and it will still be effective, as long as it's not so out of sight that it doesn't catch anything in time. You know, that's not ideal. But just play around with him, guys, and enjoy the way that he plays, because he is a fun operator, and I think he gets a bit of a bad rap when Jager is put up next to him, because obviously Jager is the popular pick, and there's a reason for that. He's been in the game for so long, he's got so many skins, he's got a bit of notoriety about him. People kind of know Jager before they come into the game, and so Wamai being the alternative, he can be a harder sell, but from a practical point and from the point of view of what he actually offers to the team, it's far from a chalk and cheese situation. You know, he's pretty solid there, and he'll give you what you need in the right situations. I just hope that they reduce the size of the view model of his gun, because it's just ridiculous. If they can sort that out, then I'd say he's almost on the same level as Jager, honestly. So try him out. I hope you enjoy him, guys, and I will catch you in the next guide, which is how to play Buck, or how to play Gridlock, or how to master, or whatever I call it now. If you enjoyed the video, subscribe, leave a like, share, all the good stuff, and I'll catch you in the next one. Do svidania, everybody. Bye bye.